Hey everyone, ready to make your writing really stand out?
Absolutely.
Today we're diving deep into 10 ways to seriously boost your English writing skills.
Should be fun.
Yeah, and it's all based on this super interesting source we found.
Oh, yeah. I know the one.
It goes way beyond basic grammar and stuff.
Yeah.
They're talking about writing that grabs people's attention, makes them actually want to keep reading.
Exactly. Writing with impact, getting your ideas across in a way that's clear, engaging, and stylish.
Yeah, exactly. And, the source really kicks off with this idea of input fueling your writing output.
Makes sense.
The very first tip is read, read, read. Now, we all know reading is good, but what should we be doing differently as writers when we're reading? What should we be paying attention to?
Right. It's not just about enjoying the story you're reading. It's more about reading like a writer. So that means really paying attention to how the author is using language, how they're crafting their sentences.
So how they're putting those sentences together.
Yeah, how they're building their arguments, the tone they use, their unique voice. Like, why did they choose this word instead of that one? Those kinds of choices.
Oh, interesting. So like actively breaking down the writing.
Yeah, like dissecting it almost. It can feel a bit intimidating at first, but it gets easier. There's this one technique I like to use.
Oh, tell me about it.
It's pretty simple. Pick a passage you love from a book.
Okay.
And rewrite it in your own words, but try to keep the original meaning intact.
That's interesting.
It forces you to really think like the author.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's almost like reverse engineering a piece of writing to understand how all the parts work together.
Exactly.
Okay, that's actually a really cool exercise.
Yeah.
I'm going to try that. But let's move on to tip number 2. This one's write every day. I'll be honest. Sometimes even I struggle to find the time. Is it really essential to write every single day, even if it's just a little bit?
It's like this. Think of writing as a skill.
Okay, yeah.
And like any skill, you got to practice it regularly to get better.
So the more you practice, the better you get.
Right. You don't have to write pages and pages each day. Even short bursts of writing can make a difference.
Like what?
Like journaling, quick social media posts, even just writing a well-thought-out email, it all adds up.
Yeah.
The key is to make it a habit. It's about consistency, getting those writing muscles working regularly.
So it's not about the quantity, it's more about building that habit.
Exactly. Making writing a part of your routine rather than this big, scary thing you avoid.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, the source also mentioned something called fun writing challenges. What are those?
Oh, those are great for adding some fun and creativity to your writing routine.
I like fun.
Like you could try describing your whole day using only metaphors, or write a story, but give yourself a really short time limit.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's about pushing yourself outside your comfort zone,
So you got to think outside the box.
Yeah, exactly. And that helps you become a more versatile writer in the long run.
Okay, I'm all for pushing boundaries. So moving on to tip number 3, expand your vocabulary. We hear this all the time, but it can be so overwhelming. Any tips for making it less daunting, maybe even enjoyable?
Definitely. A bigger vocabulary gives you more tools to express yourself clearly and creatively. The trick is to make it a habit. One good technique is to keep a word bank.
A word bank?
Yeah, like every time you come across a word you don't know, jot it down. Look up the meaning, synonyms, antonyms. Then try to use it in a sentence.
Oh, so it's not just memorizing the definition, it's about actually putting those words into practice.
Yeah, you got to use them. And don't be afraid to experiment with synonyms and antonyms to avoid repeating the same words over and over again.
So it's about making your writing more dynamic, less repetitive.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's move on to a topic that I think makes a lot of people nervous. Grammar. Tip number 4. Master grammar and punctuation. We've all made those little mistakes that make us cringe, right? So how can we build a solid foundation without getting lost in all those complicated rules?
You're right. Good grammar is like the backbone of strong writing. But you don't have to become a grammar expert overnight.
That's a relief.
Start with the basics. Sentence structure, punctuation, verb tenses. Get those down, and then you can gradually add more as you go.
Okay, makes sense. Focus on the foundation first.
Exactly.
So even if we understand the basics, we can still trip up on things like comma splices or subject-verb agreement.
Oh, yeah, those sneaky little things.
Any tips for avoiding those common errors?
One of the best things you can do is read your writing out loud. When you hear it, those errors tend to pop out more.
Oh, I see what you mean. You catch those awkward phrases.
Yeah, and don't forget about technology. Tools like Grammarly or the Hemingway editor can be super helpful.
Oh, I love those tools. Like having a personal editor.
Exactly.
Okay, so even with perfect grammar, sometimes our writing can still feel a bit flat. So let's talk about tip number 5. Start with simple sentences. So is it really okay to stick to simple sentences if we're aiming for sophisticated writing?
You know, starting simple is actually one of the best ways to make your writing clearer.
Yeah.
Complex sentences can be great, but they can also get really confusing if you're not careful.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Sometimes those long sentences just make my head spin.
Simple sentences help you get your ideas across clearly. Then you can gradually add complexity as you gain confidence.
So it's about building up to that complexity rather than trying to force it right away.
Exactly. And we'll dive deeper into that balance between simple and sophisticated in the next part of our deep dive.
Perfect. I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so we're back and ready to keep going with these awesome writing tips.
Yeah, lots more to cover.
You know, I was just thinking, it can feel kind of overwhelming trying to do all these things at once.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's a lot to take in. But the important thing is to remember it's a journey, not a race.
Okay, that's good to hear. So before the break, we were talking about start with simple sentences and how that can make your writing clearer. But I'm still curious about when it's the right time to start adding more complex sentences.
Yeah, that's a good point.
How do you know when to keep things simple and when to add more layers,
Okay, well, imagine your sentences are like building blocks. Simple sentences, they're your foundation.
Okay.
They give you that clarity and structure. But just like a building needs more than just a foundation, your writing needs variety and rhythm to keep things interesting.
So you need to add some flair, some style.
Exactly. You don't want your writing to sound monotonous.
Absolutely not. It's got to flow.
So that's where those more complex sentences come in. They add those extra layers, those details that make your writing really shine.
Okay, I like that. But how do you add variety without sacrificing clarity?
One way is to play around with the length of your sentences. Use short, punchy sentences for emphasis, to really drive a point home.
Okay.
Then weave in longer sentences to create a smoother flow.
So like a mix of short and long sentences.
Yeah, just like in music.
Oh, that's a cool analogy.
Short sentences are like the percussion, providing those sharp beats, while longer sentences are like the strings, adding that smooth melody.
I love that. It's all about finding the right balance.
Right. And just like a musician uses different instruments to create a beautiful piece, a writer uses different sentence structures to make their writing dynamic and interesting to read.
That makes so much sense. Okay, so let's move on to tip number 6. Edit and revise ruthlessly. Now, this is where I personally struggle. Editing my own work feels like pulling teeth. Any tips for making it less painful?
I get it. Editing can be tough. But it's so important. It's where good writing turns into great writing.
Okay, so how do we make it less painful?
One thing that really helps is to take a break after you finish writing. Even if it's just for a few hours, come back to it with fresh eyes. You'll be surprised at what you catch.
Oh yeah, sometimes I get so caught up in the writing that I miss obvious mistakes.
When you're too close to the work, you don't see the errors. You need to step back a bit.
It's like you need a fresh perspective.
Exactly. And another helpful tip is to read your work out loud. It helps you hear those awkward phrases and grammatical errors.
Yeah, that's a good one. So you're not just looking for errors, you're also listening for the flow, the rhythm of the words.
Exactly. You want it to sound good too, right?
Absolutely. But what about the content itself? Like, how do you know what to cut, what to add during the revision process?
Ask yourself, does every word, every sentence serve a purpose? If not, get rid of it. Be ruthless. Eliminate anything that clutters up your writing.
So every word has to earn its place.
Exactly. And pay attention to your verbs. Use active verbs whenever you can.
Oh yeah, active verbs.
They make your writing sound more energetic, more lively. Passive verbs, on the other hand, can make your writing sound weak.
That's a good point. So it's about making your writing as impactful as possible with every word carefully chosen.
You got it.
Now let's move on to tip number 7. Practice different writing styles. This one sounds exciting, but also kind of daunting. How do you start exploring new styles without feeling completely lost?
It's all about being curious and not being afraid to experiment. If you normally write fiction, try your hand at writing a persuasive essay.
Okay, so switch it up a bit.
Yeah, or if you're comfortable with formal writing, try something more informal, like a blog post.
So it's like cross-training for your writing muscles, right?
Exactly. And who knows, you might discover a new style you absolutely love.
That would be amazing. Okay, speaking of pushing boundaries, let's talk about tip number 8. Get feedback on your writing. Now, we all have that friend or family member who's happy to give their opinion, but how do you find feedback that's actually helpful that can make your writing better?
The key is to seek feedback from people you trust and respect. People who understand writing, teachers, writing groups, even online writing communities can be great resources.
So you need people who can provide constructive criticism, not just say, oh, that's nice.
Right, and be open to that criticism, even if it's not always what you want to hear.
Yeah, that can be hard.
Remember, they're just trying to help you improve. They're seeing your work from a different perspective, which can be really valuable.
Makes sense. It's like having an extra set of eyes on your work.
Exactly. Okay, so moving on to tip number 9, use writing prompts. I've always been curious about these, but not sure where to start. What exactly is a writing prompt, and how can it help us become better writers?
Yeah, good question.
Think of a prompt as a spark that gets your creativity flowing.
Okay.
It could be a single word, a sentence, an image, anything that triggers an idea.
So it gives you a starting point, something to work with.
Yeah, prompts can help you break through writer's block, explore new ideas, try different writing techniques.
Like a jump start for your imagination.
Exactly. And there are tons of resources out there for finding prompts. Websites, books, social media groups, you can even create your own.
So there's no shortage of inspiration out there.
Definitely not. And remember, there's no right or wrong way to respond to a prompt. Just have fun with it and see where your creativity takes you.
Okay, that's great advice. Finally, let's talk about tip number 10. Be patient and enjoy the process. This one seems particularly important for writers because it's easy to get discouraged or compare ourselves to others.
Oh yeah, I know that feeling.
So how do we stay motivated and keep that positive mindset, especially when things get tough?
The most important thing is to remember that writing is a craft, and it takes time and effort to develop.
It's not going to happen overnight.
Exactly. You're not going to become a master writer instantly,
Ah.
and that's okay. The key is to focus on the journey, not just the destination.
So enjoy the process of learning and growing.
Yeah. Celebrate those small victories along the way.
Like what kind of victories?
Like finishing a draft, figuring out a tricky grammar rule, getting positive feedback from someone.
Okay, so those little milestones.
Yeah, it's all about progress, not perfection.
That's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others, especially these days with social media.
Oh, for sure.
But you're right, it's more important to focus on our own journey and celebrate our own achievement.
Exactly. And remember, writing should be enjoyable, not a chore. If you're feeling stuck, take a break. Try a fun writing challenge or a new prompt. Sometimes you just need to shake things up a bit.
To rediscover that joy of writing.
Exactly. Writing is a way to express yourself, to connect with others.
To share your thoughts and ideas with the world.
Exactly. When you approach it with that kind of passion, the words will flow more easily, and the whole process becomes a lot more rewarding.
Wow, we've covered so much today. But there's still more to explore. In the last part of our deep dive, we're going to talk about how these tips can be used in different writing situations.
Sounds good.
Because writing a short story is different from writing an essay, right?
Right, different approaches for different goals. But the good news is that the core principles we've talked about, they apply to any type of writing.
So we're building a solid foundation that we can use in any writing scenario.
Exactly.
And we're back for the final part of our writing deep dive.
Time to put it all together.
We've learned some awesome techniques, but now let's talk about how to actually use them.
Right, because writing isn't one size fits all.
Exactly. Writing a captivating story is totally different from writing, say, a persuasive essay.
Totally different approaches, yeah.
So how do we tailor these tips to different writing situations?
It's all about recognizing that different types of writing require specific strategies.
Okay.
But the cool thing is, the basic principles we've been talking about, they apply to all kinds of writing.
Oh, no matter what you're writing, these tips can help.
Exactly. They'll make you a stronger, more versatile writer across the board.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So let's go back to that first tip, read, read, read. But this time, let's think about how it applies to different writing styles. Like, how is reading like a writer different for fiction versus nonfiction?
Great question. When you're reading fiction, you might focus more on things like character development.
So how the author brings those characters to life.
Yeah, or how they structure the plot to keep you hooked.
Oh yeah, those plot twists.
And dialogue, too. Pay attention to how the characters talk, how their voices sound on the page.
So you're really dissecting all those elements that make a story work.
Exactly. Now, with nonfiction, you might shift your focus to the author's arguments.
Okay.
How they present their evidence, how they structure their ideas to convince the reader.
So it's like learning how to build a strong argument, how to present information in a compelling way.
Exactly. By reading both fiction and nonfiction critically, you're basically gathering a whole arsenal of writing techniques that you can then use in your own work.
That's awesome. It's like you're stealing secrets from the masters. Okay, so now let's talk about write every day.
Yeah.
But let's think about those people with super busy schedules. I mean, finding time to write a whole novel every day is kind of impossible, right?
Well, yeah, not many people have that kind of time, but that's where those fun writing challenges can be really helpful.
Okay, those.
Even setting a timer for 15 minutes and just writing a short scene or a character sketch, that can make a difference.
So even short bursts of writing can help you stay consistent.
Exactly. And you can get creative with it too. Like instead of sending a quick text, write a thoughtful email
Oh, that's a good idea.
or jot down some reflections in a journal before bed.
So it's all about finding those little pockets of time in your day.
Exactly. Those little moments can really add up over time.
Okay, let's move on to expand your vocabulary. Does how we approach vocabulary expansion change depending on what we're writing?
Absolutely. If you're writing a fantasy novel, you might want to look up those old-fashioned words.
Ooh, like those medieval terms.
Yeah. Or if you're writing something academic, you'll need to learn the specific vocabulary for that field.
Right, it's like learning a whole new language sometimes.
It can be, but the point is to choose words that fit the style and tone of your writing.
So it's like picking the right tool for the job.
Exactly. A rich vocabulary can really elevate your writing no matter what you're writing about.
Now let's think about master grammar and punctuation in different contexts. How does the level of formality change?
It definitely varies. For casual writing, like blog posts or personal emails, you can be a bit more relaxed.
Okay, so you can use contractions and stuff.
Exactly. But for something more formal, like an academic paper, you'll need to stick to those stricter grammar rules.
So it's all about knowing your audience and the appropriate level of formality.
Right. Think of it like dressing up for different occasions.
I like that analogy.
You wouldn't wear a tuxedo to a picnic, right?
Definitely not. Okay, so let's revisit. Start with simple sentences, but let's think about how we can use this in different genres. How can those simple sentences create different effects?
Well, in a thriller novel, for example, you might use short, punchy sentences to create suspense.
Ooh, I can see that. Like he was running out of time.
Exactly. But in a poem, you might use longer, flowing sentences to create a more lyrical feel.
So it's not just about clarity, it's also about creating a mood.
Exactly. You can use sentence structure to control the pace and rhythm of your writing.
Okay, so edit and revise ruthlessly. How does this process change for different types of writing?
Well, for fiction, you might focus on making those characters really pop.
Okay, so really fleshing them out.
Yeah. Making sure the dialogue is snappy, the plot is engaging. For nonfiction, you might spend more time making sure your arguments are clear and supported by evidence.
So it's all about focusing on the elements that are most important for that particular genre.
Exactly. And remember, editing is a process. Don't be afraid to go through multiple drafts.
Okay. Practice different writing styles.
Yeah.
We talked about experimenting, but how do we make sure that actually helps us grow as writers?
It's good to have a goal in mind. Like if you want to improve your dialogue, try writing a bunch of short scenes that are all about character interaction.
Okay, so focused practice.
Right. Or if you want to work on your descriptions, try describing different settings or objects in vivid detail.
So it's like targeted training for your writing muscles.
Exactly. And even if those experiments don't turn into finished pieces, the practice itself is valuable.
Okay, that's encouraging. So get feedback on your writing. Who should we be asking for feedback, depending on what we're writing?
If you're writing fiction, other writers can be great resources.
Yeah, they get it.
Yeah. They can give you feedback on your characters, your plot, the overall flow of the story. For nonfiction, you might want to talk to experts in that field, or people who represent your target audience.
So you want feedback from people who can actually understand and appreciate what you're trying to do.
Exactly. And remember, feedback is a gift, but you don't have to take every suggestion.
Yeah, you get to decide what works best for your writing.
Exactly. Now, for use writing prompts, how can we choose prompts that help us reach specific goals?
Yeah, good question.
Look for prompts that challenge you to try new things.
Okay, so push yourself out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, like if you want to practice writing action scenes, find prompts that involve conflict or danger.
Ooh, that sounds exciting.
Or if you want to explore a specific theme, find prompts that relate to that theme.
So it's all about using prompts strategically.
Exactly. And remember, prompts are just starting points. You can take them in any direction you want.
And finally, let's revisit. Be patient and enjoy the process. How can we stay positive and keep going when we hit those inevitable roadblocks?
Well, every writer struggles no matter how experienced they are.
It's good to know.
The important thing is to view those struggles as learning opportunities.
So don't get discouraged. Keep learning.
Exactly. And seek support from other writers. They've probably been through the same thing.
It's like having a writing buddy system.
Yeah. And remember to celebrate those small wins along the way. Every little step forward is a victory.
So as we wrap up this amazing deep dive, remember that you have the power to become a truly awesome writer.
You got this.
Embrace these techniques, keep practicing, and most importantly, have fun with it. Writing should be enjoyable, a way to express yourself and connect with others.
Exactly.
So keep writing, keep learning, and keep sharing your stories with the world.
And that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining us.